Once upon a time to her deathbed, he swore. He'd been good once, a shy, almost mass graves in the woods. Midnight rituals, victim burned. The Ravens had come to Ubar scouting for ancient books said to be of great power. Had driven them off. The Ravens had come back with dropships. The kid had fled with one of those books. He was brave and dumb and wanted to join. Watching his city burn. Sorry, kid. Renato told the kid. Look, if we give them the book, they'll leave you alone. My mother died for this book! I promised her I'd protect you. Oh, damn it. The kid had run off. With the book, of course. So Renato had to run after him. The two Ravens were staring at the kid like he was their dinner, which probably was what was in their tiny brains. Hey, Renato said. They cocked their heads at him. Pick on someone as ugly as you. Wait, that didn't come out right. For the Emperor! The Ravens cawed and rushed at him. Dropship flew overhead. He hoped they hadn't noticed him. The kid. Oh, right. The Gate of Heroes. Someone's idea of a joke, making the Skyship Docks a gated community. You needed a hero's sword to open it. And the kid was on the other side of the gate. Who let you through? Promise me you'll take the book to the rebels, or I'm gonna steal your ship. I'm not taking that damn book anywhere, and neither are you. Try and stop me, laughed the kid. I bet you don't even have a hero's sword. And with that, the kid hopped away. Had to hand it to the kid. He was an idiot, but he had guts. Where was Renato going to get a hero sword? Ore and wind essence? Perfect. Hero sword. This is what he got for settling down and finding people to care about. The kid's mum had been a swell cook, and she'd laughed at Renado's jokes, even when he didn't know he'd made one. And the ravens had come to burn them. And she'd made him promise to protect the kid. But she never told him where the book was. Just the kid. He came up to a ledge. It was too far to jump. There'd been a bridge here before, hadn't there? And there was Peter, giggling at him. "How'd you get across?" he asked the kid. "Where'd you find a hook?" "I hopped," said the kid. Wise-ass kid. "Hey, look out behind you!" "Cute," said Renado. Ah, ravens. It was time to talk some sense into the kid. Just hook his way across the ledge and chase the kid down. Thing was, he hadn't used his hook since he'd retired. How had he done it? Maybe if he meditated at that altar there, he'd remember his old skills. It was starting to come back to him. Something you never completely forgot, like how to freeze time when attacking. The more he fought, the more he'd probably remember. There was the Farfarer. She was the fastest ship he'd ever known. She could do the Kestra run in 12 furlongs. Well, so the salesman had told him. And something told him the kid was about to walk into an ambush. "Stop!" he shouted. "I'm not giving you the book!" shouted the kid, and took off. "No! Peter!" But the kid ran for it, and a goggler nailed him with its ivy. The book was unburned. Next to it were the buckles from the kid's shoes, and a kid-sized pile of ashes. Damn it. Why hadn't he lied and told the kid he'd take the book to the rebels? The kid would be alive now. Really pissed off and betrayed, but alive. Oh, damn it. Renado picked up the book. He couldn't let the Empire have it now. He was going to have to get it out of there. He'd be a wanted man. Probably have to join the rebellion just to have a place to dock. Well, he'd hated home life anyway. What was the big deal about this book anyway? Maybe he should open it and find out. All that had been years ago. How many? The war was a blur, and now 3 Raven scout ships were chasing him. "Where are you running, rebel?" cawed the Raven captain over the loud hailer. Renado could see them cranking up their catapults. "Just going out for milk?" Renado yelled back. "Where can you run?" laughed the Raven horribly. Far behind him, another city was burning. The dark cloud above its island was thousands of Imperial ships. The fleet was doing a thorough job. "Take us to the rebel base! I will spare your life!" it called. The entire jury-rigged rebel fleet was only a few islands to the east. Beyond that were only the pillars of heaven, a sea of endless blood-colored tornadoes. The rebellion was out of time. unless Renato could bring a game changer. Maybe he could. Renato had found out where he could find the pieces of the Sky Ripper, the legendary weapon that had exiled the lost gods. Surely a legendary weapon could win the final battle. On the other hand, his old friend Lapino had sent Renato a desperate message saying he had a brilliant scheme to save the rebellion. If Renato could only rescue him. Renato dived the Farfarer towards the abyss. As he felt the heat of the jet stream, the Raven ships peeled off, not stable enough to follow him down there. Now it was time to choose. Lapino or the Sky Ripper? Every child knew about the Sky Ripper. The Transcendent Emperor had buried its pieces. What could have brought them to light? Isengrim III had once been kind, but he'd gone mad. And now he was conducting secret, obscene rituals to bring back the lost gods. Had he, somehow, summoned the long-lost components of the legendary weapon out of the deep places of the earth? It was more than Renato could fathom. But if he could find a legendary weapon, he would use it. As he set foot on the island, Renato could not help but feel a tinge of guilt. He'd left Lapino behind. He hoped the Mad Rabbit had somehow escaped the Ravens. He hoped they hadn't eaten him. If they had, he hoped they hadn't eaten him alive. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper? Renato never made plans that required constant vigilance. He was a hero. He didn't think too much. He just went with his gut and hoped it all worked out. The Sky Ripper was a long shot. He'd have to devote himself to it. No side journeys, no rescuing old friends. That was against his nature. Could he stick with it? Who are you looking at? Oh, right. No one. The people who had built this castle, did they even know what monstrous weapon lay hidden within their walls? The Sky Ripper could destroy anything it touched, or so the legend said. As the Transcendent Emperor had fought the lost gods, thousands of thousands had died. But Renato had been through wars. The only merciful war was a short one. Renato's blood was up. He just needed to smash something. Hero Wall, Hero Sword, Ice Wall, Ice Hewn.
Goodbye.
These are really nice chests. You should take one home, he thought. Didn't your mother tell you it's rude to stare? Snapped Renato, a little smug. Can't we just agree to disagree? Said Renato. No? Firewalls only let you through if they think you're hot enough. That was new. Most people still use doorknobs. You never completely forgot. Like how to freeze time when attacking. The more he fought, the more he'd probably remember. There it was. Skyripper's armature. The stuff that dreams are made of. Engineers' dreams, anyway. The device was intricate. No one alive had the skill to make a thing like it. How was it part of a weapon at all? He'd have to ask a scientist. But first, he'd get the second piece. Skyripper had a heart. A core that had come to rest on the next island. Well, there was another island he could reach. Zenobia had just invaded it with her father's Raven battalions. She must be encamped there still. But fighting Zenobia now, that made no sense at all. He'd already sacrificed one friend to get this armature, was it? He didn't need to hurry to face her. She would find him. It was a no-brainer. He'd sacrificed his old friend Lapino to get the armature. And the armature was useless by itself, only a series of coils and wheels. War demanded sacrifices, and he would make more before the end. He would have to choose the greatest good, no matter how much it cost him. Zenobia. Well, he would see her sooner or later, across a battlefield or a sword's point before all this was over. He was sure of that. The power was in the core. Obviously, he had to get the core. Doubt sunk in before he was even out of sight of the Farfarer. Why had he chosen the Skyripper? It was the sort of path he'd always avoided. The path of responsibility, of seriousness. Had he grown up? He didn't feel grown up. He'd made this decision from his gut, like he always did. Somehow, he'd impulsively decided to stop being impulsive. Did that make any sense? Who needed bridges anyway? I wonder what I could make with all these sword crafting materials, thought Renato. This chest contained blank passports from 15 countries. And something useful. There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time. felt ready to take on new powers. There were fewer and fewer trees. There were only these huge crystalline growths. Had those been here before? He no longer heard birds except for the feverish cawing of the ravens when they attacked. He couldn't smell the small animals of the forest, the mice and rabbits. Where had they gone? And he was getting hungry too. This was an unhealthy place to be. Rather well, actually. The 20-sided core made him feel physically sick. Once he had sneaked into a temple of the dark arts, and he hadn't liked what he smelt and saw there. This felt like that. As quick as he could, he wrangled the icosahedron into the armature. The wheels began to spin, then glow. The sick feeling quickly spun away. Now he only felt sad. He had lost good friends for this war apparatus. He carried his prize back to the Farfarer. Now he had to make his next move. There was a key Imperial outpost on the Nexus. If this really was some sort of super weapon, he could use it to wreak havoc on the enemy. And if it wasn't, well, better to know that before the final battle. But maybe he should show it to some scientists first. There was an observatory on the Nexus. Maybe he should go there before he fired it. Reynardo had never been much of a student. At Swordfu School, he'd never read the books, just looked at the pictures. I'm Zenobia. But weapons he understood. His gut told him that the Skyripper would work great. He would use it to take out the Imperial outpost. And what's the worst that could happen? The thing wouldn't work, and then he'd take it to the scientists. Right? Exactly. As he set out down the path, Reynardo wondered why the parts of the Skyripper had only surfaced now, thousands of years after the Transcendent Emperor had discarded it. This Emperor, Isengrim III, had performed terrible, bloodthirsty rituals to invoke the lost gods. Perhaps that was bringing up lost artifacts. How perfect, then, that the Skyripper would reappear to be his destruction. Could he craft with the materials he had? Reynardo had a pretty good idea, actually. He was sort of yanking his own chain, wasn't he? fresh socks, thought Renato. Please be fresh socks. He was tired of slaughtering ravens. Maybe it was time to test out the new weapon. He turned a knob on the Sky Ripper. It made strange, mechanical noises. The wheels spun faster. It began to hum.
The Sky Ripper was following his every step. At least it acknowledged him as the master. But there was no trigger. How was he supposed to fire it? Fire, he said. Nothing happened. Well, maybe it just needed to warm up. After all, it hadn't been fired in thousands of years.
A crafting bench. Renato wondered what he could make with it. The Sky Ripper was making a whining noise now, and its wheels were spinning so fast he could no longer see them.
Renato had a thought. Please? He asked. The Sky Ripper began to glow.
Boom! The outpost burst into flame. Ravens flapped out screaming, wings on fire. The base was his. The far speaker toad came hopping out.
Renato!
It croaked, sounding like a toad version of Zenobia.
Don't use the Sky Ripper. It will destroy the world.
Yeah, sure it will, cracked Renato. Pull the other one.
If you don't trust me, go see Calaveras.
That sounded sensible. Why did she always have to sound sensible all the time? Oh, it was infuriating.
Of course she would say that. He was supposed to hurry and bring the Sky Ripper to the council so the rebels could actually win the war. But what if she was right?
Damn it. Just this once, he would not let Zenobia get into his head with her logic and her wisdom and her appeals to reason. He was a fox. He'd go with his instincts, and it would all work out like it always did. Oh, he was sounding like a reckless idiot, even to himself. But if there was one thing Renato could never bring himself to do, it was turn back on a decision he'd made. Imperials were flapping and cawing all around the ruins. They must be panicking with rumors flying of the superweapon. Maybe they hoped to find and destroy the base before he could put the Sky Ripper into action. The Sky Ripper was whining and heating up. It will be time to use that energy soon. Smashing things was fun. This was much easier than free climbing. He'd once met a pirate captain. He used hooks to get around his ship. Oh, what was his name again? Good to practice your moves, thought Reynardo. Future limber. was a fantastic weapon. Ravens burst into flames with just a touch of its killer beam. He was tempted to leave it on all the time, but he didn't want to accidentally slice off some council toad's head or tongue. She'd been trying to distract him. Well, this time, no one was going to distract him. Boy, if looks could kill. Have you ever felt you were just going round in circles? Bernardo felt like that. The long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good. As he headed towards the council chamber, Bernardo felt everyone watching him.
"You've saved the rebellion," said the council speaker. "Frankly, we were afraid you'd turn aside to save that idiot Lapino."
If you never make sacrifices, he said, you're probably not doing the right thing. The speaker nodded.
"Are you ready to lead the charge?"
Let's roll, he said, with grim satisfaction. Bernardo set sail for the fleet. The Sky Ripper had lost its wine. It was humming now, as if it had taken some time to seat properly. He had always been irresponsible. This time, he'd done the right thing, made the hard decisions. He was a real hero. He hadn't let himself be distracted by old friends or old lovers turned enemies. Finally, he could be proud of himself. He was ready. So was Sky Ripper. The Sky Ripper had a will of its own. It picked out its own targets and set them on fire. This was going to be a short battle. He would set the ships on fire if he didn't need them to get to the Emperor. And he wondered if he'd see Zenobia, or if she'd flee. Wouldn't she be proud of him? At least, a bit of respect. He'd become an all-conquering hero. If I craft a sword now, it's going to be really short. Renato felt like he was ready to learn new things. Thank goodness he didn't have to go to school for that. Of all the artisans he was creating employment for. Truly, he was a job creator. Building these platforms was so expensive, they'd run out of budget for guardrails.
The Emperor! Called the Ravens.
What else could you hook? Hey! I got this friend who's a swan. Could he join up? He dyes his feathers. Parchment on a signpost. It was from her.
Every time you fire, you risk the destruction of the universe. That's insane. We surrender. A trick? Maybe she really believed it. He could hear horns blaring the retreat. Maybe it was true. Maybe they had one.
Fresh meat.
Renato was making himself dizzy. Fun! There was a sign. Take the goat across first.
And there was Zenobia, wearing the white robes of surrender. She came and kneeled before him. Why didn't you listen to me? I was trying to save you too. You're the enemy, he said. I was never your enemy, Renato. Then she spoke a terrible word and made a gesture with her hand. She stopped moving, covered in frost, and he wondered why she'd frozen herself. Then the Sky Ripper froze, and then, for a moment, he felt very cold and discovered that he couldn't move. The next thing he knew, the sun was a giant, Monstrously red. It took up half the sky, and he was in a parched red desert. And then he was on fire.
Okay, that was weird. He could have sworn he just died. Instead, he was on the Farfarer, sailing away from Ubar. And it was still burning. He'd fled burning Ubar years ago, hadn't he? And now he was back there. Had all those years fighting the Empire been nothing but a vision into the future? A useful vision if it was true. He'd learned something.
Zenobia still had feelings for him.
He'd made bad choices. But now, when the real battle came, he wouldn't make those choices. He wouldn't make the same mistake twice. The book's pages began to flip backwards, towards the beginning. And he realized that his adventure was just beginning. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game-changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Or so a scholar in the mountains had told him. Surely the weapon that banished the lost gods could defeat the Emperor. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Emperor had brought the Sky Ripper pieces up out of ancient burial by his obscene rituals. Could this be where the Iblis Stone was hidden? Someone better get it before he does, thought Reynardo. On the other hand, his old friend Lupino needed rescuing. Lupino was no game changer, but could Reynardo really leave an old friend to the Ravens? The island was windswept desert. No one went there except ostriches and ostrich hunters. The Iblis Stone. It sounded ominous. It sounded powerful. If the Emperor was searching for it, it must be dangerous. And so, Reynardo went ostrich hunting. Every child could sing verses about the Sky Ripper, but ancient codices held hints of other things. A stone that ate souls, a ruby that drank blood, a jewel only a righteous man could give away. Were all these things the Iblis Stone? Long hidden in a buried temple? Another ancient item that was only resurfacing now? Drawn up from the deeps by the Emperor's horrific rituals? Hey, I'm a firefox, thought Reynardo. Reynardo distrusted doors that opened automatically, especially after being buried for millennia. Was this some sort of trap? fear, cawing in frustration. But he was still searching for a way in. Good. And he hadn't come too late.
When Renato went to the china shop, for some reason the owner was always nervous.
Sharp? Check. Pointy? Check. Flexible? Check. What else do you need in a sword?